All right, everyone. Today I am joined with Fong, who is my amazing bestie IRL. Such a total inspiration.
Stop.
She is a queen. You must stand her. And you know me, obviously, Lapis, or maybe you don't know me. I have been gone for like 5 months. I don't blame you if you've forgotten. But anyway, today we are
Dead.
joined with a very special guest to talk about a very important issue or series of issues that are kind of engulfing Canada and America as we speak.
Yeah, for sure. I guess I'll introduce myself a little bit more. My name is Phuong. I am a queer Vietnamese person living in Canada. I have been here since I was 5, so I'm a first generation immigrant. And oftentimes, when it comes to issues that relate to my community specifically, I will definitely try and advocate for that. But I have been a lot more involved in talking about Indigenous issues, specifically in Canada. And I have been recently trying to get better at working in solidarity with the Black community as well. So oftentimes, a lot of my posts on my Instagram, that's where I do the majority of my work, will be about those issues. But I still talk about things that affect me personally as well.
And we will link Fong's amazing Instagram in the comments. Definitely follow her
Yes.
there. So, it's difficult to know where to start sometimes because there's so
Yeah,
many
there's a
developments.
lot to even talk about. So I don't even know where we should start because
I guess
it's
I kind
honestly
of
full
want
of
us
that.
to start with some good news. I think
Yeah,
that
for sure.
in like kind of scary, uncertain times like this, it's good for people to have something good to know and good to look at. So,
For sure.
one bit of good news. Now, I know that due to President Trump's characteristic idiotic ranting, a lot of people are afraid that he will declare martial law and begin to hurt the protesters with, the military, straight up gunning down civilians. And while we can argue that the police are basically doing that already, it is kind of a new dangerous step for the United States to go under martial law. But I want to give you a bit of encouragement, and I will show you my source. And
We
it is
love
this.
sources.
Um,
Ooh.
no, shut up. I don't want to hear the sound. Um, let's see. Yes, but Trump cannot declare martial law. The Supreme Court has ruled that the power belongs to Congress. Congress controls when, where, and how it is used, and they can take that power away. And they've already imposed acts that limit martial law. Now, I'll link this in the description of the video, the full article. But essentially, you do not have to worry about martial law unless the Democrats choose to give that power to Trump. And I believe that we have a lot more leverage over the Democratic Party than we do, well, Trump's base. Because most people in America don't vote to begin with. But Trump's base is, I guess, composed of some of the most reactionary elements of society who want these protesters to be shot for little to no other reason than their skin color, and it's scary, and they burned a Target. Oh no, what a tragedy.
But won't someone think about the targets?
That Target could have been someone's child.
Yeah, I laugh because that target was my child, actually, specifically.
Never talk to me or my Target again.
Yeah.
And something else that happened today is, I don't know if you saw it, but Trump decided that it would be very funny or very, oh, this is going to enhance his image, to come out to in front of this church in the middle of the city and hold up a Bible. And then someone off screen, while he's doing this bizarre photo op, asks, "Is it your Bible?" And then Trump is silent for good 5 seconds and then says, "It's a Bible."
That's it. Yeah, that's so weird. That's literally so whack. What the actual heck?
I have no
someone
idea.
Someone asked, did you guys see Trump's speech? I did not. Did you?
I
Lapis?
didn't see it either.
Okay.
I suppose like we could probably share it from Twitter and watch it. But right now, who really wants to see the ugly orange buffoon
Yeah,
speak more?
maybe we'll get to that once we speak about some of the more recent issues that have come up, other than the horrible burning of my personal child Target. Maybe we can get to that later, because actually I'm curious to see his speech though. Actually, like I'm actually curious to see his response, but given that we probably should like at least lay the groundwork for other things right now.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll shelve it for the time being. But yeah, I guess we'll start with. Actually, I guess we should start with what happened in Montreal.
How there was. Well, you weren't at Montreal, but we've all
I
seen
wasn't. No,
videos.
we
How
have. Yes,
there was a mainly peaceful protest that was beginning, and then there was
indeed.
like 5 people clad in black who threw a bunch of bricks through a window, and then all of a sudden we got a massive police overreaction.
Yeah, honestly, according to the accounts I've read and according to what I've seen, it wasn't actually even a response to that. Like, yes, there were people. Oh, hello. Yes, there were people who were like reacting negatively in terms of reacting negatively, as in like there were people who were smashing windows and things like that.
Yeah.
The SPVM van actually came not as a reaction to that though. Like they literally just came to break up the gathering.
Yeah.
Which
So it's a typical police riot.
Basically, so it's basically police, because like before, throughout literally the whole day, the march was very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
There was like no kind of like there was very minimal police presence. It was kind of only like towards the outskirts of the streets to like make sure that everyone stayed inside and that like they were like directing traffic, so like marchers could like go through the downtown streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until around I think like 7, so around like 7 p.m. 7:30 or something, it started getting dark and people were starting to go home. Like people were already starting to disperse. Like the organizers were like, "Thank you everyone for coming to the gathering," blah blah blah. Okay. Then the SPVM truck blares through, just with the speakers in both like French and English, of course, saying like, "This is an unlawful gathering, disperse immediately." And that's when the tear gas started. Literally a second after the announcement of dispersion, like tear gas was being shot. Like I don't know if rubber bullets were being shot right after, but I know that there was tear gas involved, and like people were hit, and like they were also purposely sealing off the roads as if they were literally like
trying to entrap people.
Yeah, literally. And like they also blocked tons of metro exits again so that people literally couldn't leave. And like I know that so in Montreal there's the metro lines. The ones that usually run downtown is the Green Line, like the main one that runs downtown. And there was like the Green Line wasn't stopping through the major stations. So like people had to take the Orange Line or had to take different lines home. They had to literally like go out of their way to try and find metro stops that weren't being like crawled through with police. So yeah, so literally SPVM, like the Montreal police, did what the American police was doing and just completely escalated it for no
what's
reason.
that?
Absolutely
It's only a problem in America, you guys. Canada has no problem with police brutality, and police never overreact here. There's no violence. All our police are nice and friendly. Aren't we so much of a better country?
Yeah, all they do is just like give little kids maple syrup. Like obviously they don't do anything bad. Like it was, I mean, it's actually horrifying to witness because like I think it's not obviously it's horrifying to witness because any type of police violence is horrifying to witness.
Yeah.
But I like the minute I heard the news that they were using tear gas and they were like starting to fire bullets, I immediately got terrified because I have friends who are still in Montreal. Like I know people who are still there, and I was really concerned that there were people I knew who were getting hurt. Thankfully, I think that everyone I know personally is okay. I checked in on some friends and stuff like that, but yeah, like it was crazy how quickly it turned from like a beautiful like march full of like a lot of peace and a lot of like strong messages about like what we can do to move forward during this time, and it turned into like that.
An
Yeah, it turned
assault, a
into
police riot.
basically, yeah, it is. That is, the rioters are the police. Like, I don't know how else to put this. Like, the rioters are the freaking police. Like, they instigated every instance of violence, and a lot of like, and it's just so bullshit to me too that they could even justify doing this because, like, the people were already leaving. So, like, even if you wanted to use like the coronavirus as an excuse to like break up the crowd because of social distancing, people were literally already going. Like, what was the purpose?
And I think there's something very deliberate about using police brutality to break up a protesting police brutality. It is a flexing of muscles. It is saying, we are not afraid of you. We can shut you down whenever you want. We will brutalize you and we will face no consequences.
I'll be right back.
All right, sure.
I'll be right back.
I will address some of the other things that are going on. Someone said that the Insurrection Act is being invoked. Let's see. So I've got this article on CNN, which obviously isn't a very good news source, but hey, what can you do? They're the ones that are reporting on it right now. So let's see here. He threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807 and to deploy U.S. soldiers.
Sorry, what did I miss? My roommate just wanted to ask me if she could borrow some Ziploc bags. I was like, yeah, you can take whatever you want.
Oh, I was just going over the Insurrection Act of 1807 and saying, okay, can Trump deploy U.S. soldiers to U.S. cities without permission of the state or the governors?
Oh, okay, I got you.
And I think it's been done. There's been 2 times that it's been used lately, and that was in the 50s, most notably in the 50s to enforce desegregation, and in the 60s to address Detroit riots. And then they used it in LA in 1992 with the Rodney King protests. And then it was amended in 2006, but apparently some of those objections were dropped. One section of the law suggests the states must first request help, but other portions of the Insurrection Act do not require a state or governor's legislature's okay, such as when the president determines the situation in a state makes it impossible to enforce U.S. laws or when citizens' rights are abridged.
Okay, so TLDR, it's, I guess, like, it seems like inconsistent.
Exactly. I think the Insurrection Act should be abolished, and they need to rewrite this legislation to have more clarity over whether it involves, do the governors have a veto on this? Do mayors have a veto on this? Is it just something the president can enforce willy-nilly? It seems like it gives the president a lot of vague and undefined powers. For sure. And that's, to me, this sounds very Canadian because we have a
relatable content.
Because our prime minister has way, way more power than the American president does.
Yeah, like officially, yes. Like
now,
in terms of like legal things, yeah, for sure, the prime minister has quite a lot of power as to like what can be enforced. I guess we can like link it back to like when Daddy Trudeau, if you will, Pierre Trudeau, implemented the emergency like war measures act or something during the FLQ riots in the 1970s.
Yeah, where he basically put Quebec under martial law and marched the military in.
And like arrested a bunch of people, and then afterwards was like, why can't Quebec just want to be part of Canada?
All these bleeding heart liberals are getting mad about this.
Literally. Get over it. I'm like, I don't know, Trudeau. Maybe because you arrested innocent people for no reason. Maybe that's why they don't feel like they belong or want to be a part of Canada. Like, look, Quebec has its own issues, again, as very much evidenced by like police brutality. Actually, SPVM arguably is one of the worst like police, like municipality polices, like in Canada. Like,
you mean the Montreal Police Force?
Yeah, the SPVM, the Montreal Police Force, is like one of the worst.
Yeah, I've
sure.
heard that from like all of my activist buddies. I know this is anecdotal, but whatever.
Yeah,
Like they protested in Toronto, they protested in Vancouver,
right.
they protested in cities all over Canada. The Montreal police is the one they say, these are the most brutal, these are the most violent, these
Yeah.
are the that will not hesitate to beat you up.
No, legitimately, it's terrifying because I mean, like, even when I see them in everyday interactions, even like outside of a policing, like, sorry, of a like demonstrating environment or like a march, the way that they carry themselves is
Mm-hmm.
like the way that they're posturing as if they like have every single right to like, it's like as there's no other way I can describe it, but it is a literal colonial entitlement. They are walking
Mm.
around as if they are freshly off the colonizer's boat and they're like looking for
I
people
can't
to
wait to seize
kill.
something.
Yeah, literally. That is what they look like walking around Montreal. It is legitimately so gross. I'm like, yeah, how can you even anyways, and like also the amount of times that like oh, specifically also STM police, like the people who will monitor specifically metro stations. Of course, the amount of brutality that's happened to like the homeless population in Montreal is again to another level. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't even describe it. Because like in Ottawa, I've noticed that like, of course, I think in any downtown core, there is like a there's always going to be presence of like homeless people.
Yeah.
But especially, I've yet to like really see them like anything be happen like with police in Ottawa. Again, I'm sure it has, but like I just
Mm-hmm.
mean like of all the years that I've lived here and of all the times I've been in downtown and have just been walking around, I've yet to see an active like police presence like in the Rideau Center trying to like,
Yeah.
like kick out anybody. But even in like the 8 months I was taking the metro every day in Montreal, the amount of police presence in the metro stations and the people that would like um, and the people that they would harass, for lack of a better word, like literally harass, um, was on like yeah, again, like an unprecedented level.
Yeah. I like I've been to Montreal a few times and it was surprising to me how aggressive they were. Like it's just
Yeah,
something I
it's
hadn't
terrifying.
witnessed before, and it would be even worse. Um, oh,
Oh
so I'm
shit!
getting from one of my commenters saying, where I live, they banned using military as police due to a quote unquote incident where military mowed down protesters with bullets.
I saw that, and
Yeah,
that's why I said, "Oh shit!"
yeah, it's
Oh my
quite
god.
bad. Um, and it's,
Yeah,
I just, why? Like, there is no need for all of these measures. And I just think that hopefully the Insurrection Act um, will not allow Trump to do as he wishes, even if it seems like a clunky piece of outdated legislation from like 200 years ago. Um,
yeah,
and it isn't just horrible that people who made laws 200 years ago that have very little to absolutely no relevance on our lives nowadays get to be wielded like a cudgel by politicians in the 21st century.
yeah, 100%. And I think it also just speaks to how systemic these things really are, right? Like I was talking to a friend earlier
Mm-hmm.
today. Um, I told her to watch the live stream, so maybe she's here. Haha.
I hope so.
I hope so too. But anyways, we were talking about how, like, the biggest mistake that we made was letting liberals control the narrative that racism is an individual, personal, like, flaw, as if it was some sort of like character failure,
Yeah,
instead of actually um, addressing that it's a systemic thing that is rooted in all of us that we have to like actively dismantle, and it's something that we're all going to have to work on, right? Like it's not something that is necessarily a personal failing. Like you can be a good person, like you can be a good person and you can I don't know, like marry a person of color
yeah,
and whatever, you can have POC friends, BIPOC friends, and still be racist. Like it's not mutually exclusive, and that's
exactly. You
something
can be really kind to the Black people you know and still be racist towards them, still
Oh,
have prejudice
here.
against them, still believe all of these really coded ideas around how a huge, massive police force is needed at all times, and how, oh, thugs are ruining America. Oh, there's crime in the inner cities like there's no tomorrow. We don't need any of this sort of energy. We don't
Yeah.
need that sort of thing. And it is a product of a systemically racist mindset, not of, oh, this individual person just happens to have a moral failing. Isn't it too bad for them?
Yeah, 100%. Hi, Photoso. It's good to see you. Also, I'm on the SteamYard, so I can't comment like directly on the YouTube. But I guess on the YouTube, I sound like a freaking boomer.
You do.
On the YouTube link.
On the YouTubes.
On the YouTube,
internet.
Sorry, children. I can't comment on the YouTubes because I am not there. No, okay. I just mean like I can't like type out my comments. So I'll just address the comments I've been seeing coming in. So one question that we got from Josiah, which was which specific policy changes would you make to reform the Canadian and our American police forces going forward? Okay, I think Lapis, you responded pretty well with like the kind of like links and Google Docs we can post. But also I just think in general, we are both the opinion that like these systems are beyond reform at this point.
Yeah,
right?
I think we need to like move beyond policing, but there are some things. Reforms would definitely make things better, per se.
Yes, it would be like, if anything, we would only advocate for reform as like a form of immediate harm reduction, right? As like a way that we can like, like kind of like stem the bleeding from the wound, if you will, and like maybe stop deaths from rising so much within both Canada and the United States. But I think that, and in those types of policies, we can discuss a bit more on like what that harm reduction looks like. But I think that, again, overall, as an institution, policing is inherently about the monopoly of violence from the state. And I know that sounds like very like it sounds like political science jargon, like forgive me, and I will like try and break that down in a way that's a bit more accessible. But basically what that monopoly on violence looks like is it looks like the police doing whatever they want to peaceful protesters with absolutely no accountability.
Or fear of any consequences.
Yes, and the reason for that is because it is baked into our political institutions and into our constitution that the police can do it. Like it's legal. It's all completely legal. So I guess the one thing that I would, like target the first thing I would target in terms of reform would be the legal system and laws that don't allow for cops to be sued. Like, I don't know if you've seen Hassan Minhaj's Patriot Act, but he did an entire episode on the idea of like how cops can't be sued in America and how there's like entire legislation around that. Again, I'm not an expert and like he goes into a bit more specific detail, but basically the gist of it is that this law exists. So basically it's like a catch-22. You can only sue a cop if you can prove that your rights were violated in this exact same instance from another trial. But that trial most likely never happened because it can't happen unless you sue a cop.
And then they start going against your rights.
Exactly. So basically it's like this catch-22 of it's kind of like sort of like how can you gain work experience if you need work experience for a job? How can you sue a cop if you don't have any precedence of cops ever being sued, right? So it's like this constant like negative feedback loop. Yeah, where like that's why police can do literally so much. And there's also the problem with police unions, of course, too.
And
that's also
a tool for police to escape any accountability.
Yeah, for sure.
And
that's
honestly,
also a good point.
Anyone who does try to provide accountability to these police unions, the police union will often return with threats of violence or censorship of police brutality incidents. Like 100%. A good example here in Canada is that the police, that it was discovered that the Wikipedia article and numerous other articles online mentioning the Starlight Tours, which is a pretty infamous case of police brutality in Saskatoon, where Indigenous young men were taken into custody and dumped on the snows at the very edge of the city, well into, I think they stopped it around 2004. And then there have been cases about it popping up that have been denied by the department as late as 2018. So it was discovered that the police department or a computer from the police department had been used to edit out these sections referring to the Starlight Tours across the internet.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. I heard about the Starlight Tours, but I didn't know to which extent they went to censoring that. That's absolutely insane. But yeah, also Ali has mentioned that there's cultural and media pressure on protesters to not defend themselves when being attacked. That's also another huge factor.
Exactly. Like peaceful
that.
protest
Yeah.
is fine. I really do empathize with those who have the values of pacifism. However, is it really our place to judge people who are being defending themselves against being hit constantly by these brutal riot police, shot with bullets, gassed with chemical weapons that are banned in military conflict? Are we really supposed to say, are we supposed to tell them, are you supposed to, you're supposed to take this lying down. We can't have any violence here.
Yeah, it's absolutely like, again, also, yes, I am a boomer in this instance. Ali, that's true. I mean, like, I feel like I inadvertently chose a very boomer outfit for today's stream. I didn't need to. I just didn't want you guys to see my like really like raggedy PJs. So I was like, I better throw something on really quickly. So I just threw on like a sweater, and like I was doing my hair and I really like putting it in this scarf. So that's what I decided. Mm-hmm. But now I realize I kind of look like a boomer mom, but that's okay. I will appropriate boomer aesthetics. Okay. Yeah. That is how I will fight.
It's reclamation.
You. Honestly, it is at this point. This is what reparation looks like. But yeah.
But yeah, as we were saying, I think a really big thing for me is that no more chemical weapons used on protesters by the police. It should be illegal to use tear gas on civilians in the same way it's illegal for the military to use tear gas on other combatants.
Yeah, like if it's already literally considered a war crime on like other civilians, like from other nations, why is it acceptable to use against your own citizens? That makes no sense. So I guess that would also go into Josiah's question about like reform in terms of, again, like immediate harm reduction that we can lobby for, which is again legislation that can allow for cops to be straight up sued, so that there's some sort of like legal framework in which you can hold cops accountable. And another way is to just straight up make like tear gas illegal in all circumstances, like all. And also rubber bullets. I've been seeing a lot of posts on Twitter about what rubber bullets actually look like, and I will fully admit I did not know how lethal they could be either. Like, I think that the name rubber bullets is extremely misleading, because you just think that they're like tiny little bullets. Like you think they're the same size.
They're massive. As, like, they look like this with a thin rubber coating.
Yeah, they look like actual missiles. It's insane. Like, okay,
and that's why police departments don't actually use the term rubber bullets. They call them 40 millimeter. They know,
my God, that's crazy.
It's a deliberate, calling them rubber bullets is a media framing, which serves to it's euphemistic. It's euphemistic of the violence that the police are actually doing with these weapons that we have given them.
Yeah, and those weapons are funded with our tax money.
Mm-hmm. We are paying them for us.
Yeah, that's so messed up once you think about it. And like, I'm not often a fan of the very overused American phrase taxation is theft, but in the case where my tax dollars are going to literally harming other BIPOC, that is theft. That's really theft.
I would say it's like expropriation. It's like the mafia demanding protection money from you.
Yeah, no, that's true. It is. So it's like, basically they're hired thugs.
Yeah, they are. They like, the police are just a gang with a lot more of authority than the rest.
Yeah. Ali asks, in terms of reparations, how would a system like that look in Canada and include Indigenous people? Okay, that's a good question.
It is such a great question. I believe that reparations come in a variety of forms. I support reparations for both Indigenous and Black Canadians.
Yeah, I agree, fully.
And because there was slavery in Canada and there was systemic racism, and there continues to be. And so they deserve some sort
100%.
of financial, restitution for that. But not only that, I feel like it needs to kind of extend beyond that, at least, especially for Indigenous people. I feel like we need to set up a system funded by the government for reclaiming Indigenous land and then ceding it back to council membership, like a fund. So every year, like say $20 billion goes into purchasing land for Indigenous people and then returning it to tribal ownership.
Yeah, I think that's a good model. I would fully admit that I have not done enough research into like land reparations and treaties to like fully speak on any specifics. And I would definitely like highly recommend you look into Indigenous scholars who do work on this. I think that there's
definitely.
I took some Indigenous studies classes this year in my university, and I think that a good place to start would be Leanne Simpson. Leanne Simpson talks a lot about Indigenous like issues in Canada in general, and I think she has done some work or has had some papers on reparations. But again, yeah, I guess I'll just like give out a name a bunch of Indigenous scholars I know. I don't know if they'll specifically address reparations, but they most likely will.
And that's great because, like, you know, Phuong and I, and especially me, we are settlers on Indigenous land, so we can't necessarily speak to the fullest authority on this issue.
Exactly.
This is just a notion I had, but I'm more than happy to sublent my admittedly limited knowledge with works from Indigenous scholars speaking from their lived experience.
Yeah, and like I definitely, and again, like I think that, I guess for my personal thoughts, I think that something that needs to be addressed is how exactly like land ownership works in a I guess, like, to be really honest, I'm not sure if reparations is completely possible under a system in which private property is still law, right? Because the thing is, insofar as private property continuing to be law, in order to make Indigenous ownership of the land, the private property will have, like, or like the lease, the concept of like owning will have to be transferred back to, again, like Indigenous
models of property
nations. But that's not how Indigenous conceptions of land works. It just like is, so like even if we try to do reparations, it like, unless we do it in a way that is respectful of like Indigenous epistemologies about what land actually means and what land holds like to like different Indigenous nations, because that's also another problem. It's every colonial border fucked everything up. Yes, exactly. And even though there's similar understandings of land, obviously each nation is going to have a different conception of like how that land should be used, right? As you say, there's so many variations within how Indigenous nations work. So like, and again, as I said, colonial borders literally fucked everything up, right? So that like, even for example, like the unceded territory of Ottawa, where we both are right now, it's unceded Algonquin territory. But there are places in Canada where it's like unceded Algonquin, but also like it could belong to other nations as well, like Ojibwe. So it's like, how do you address reparations when there are two nations with strong and equal claims to the land, when under a law of private property, only one person or one entity can fully own it, right? So I think that we need to
and that's why I think maybe looking into joint ownership models when it comes to those situations, and bringing both tribal councils to the table to discuss the issue is something we should definitely look into. Obviously, reparations cannot be done in the same colonial model as on high. Like, yes, this is what we think is best for you. This is how we will fix the problem of racism we have inflicted upon you. You don't really have a say in the process. This is just what we're doing. And that's why I thought it was so important that instead of transferring it like ownership to like one person, I thought it should be transferred to Indigenous communities. So the community can itself vote on and decide what they want to do with their newly acquired, returned, I guess would be a more accurate term. Land.
100%. I think that I guess like to like wrap this topic up, something also important to keep in mind is that, especially within the Canadian context, again, I know that it's maybe somewhat similar in America, but I can't speak to it because a lot of what I know is Indigenous issues in relation to Canada specifically. But what I do know is that the band council system as it stands right now is a vestige of colonial legacies too, right?
So again, yes. So we do need to also look into like changing that as well. It's just... It's very difficult because in order to have effective reparations, we also have to, kind of undo the legacy of, I guess the colonial managed system of government that has been set up for Indigenous people and say, okay, how would you like to be governed, instead of this is how we have been governing you.
Exactly.
And once we do that, it will be much easier, I think, to proceed with reparations and, negotiations like the ones you just mentioned on a better footing.
Exactly. So yeah, like I guess overall, reparations can't really happen until Indigenous sovereignty is properly established, and unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet in Canada. So any other type of reparation before that can only be, again, harm reduction, right? Can only be a type of temporary solution to tide us over for a real structural change, in the same way that anything we lobby now in terms of reform to policing can only be a harm reduction. But the end goal should
Abolish
be
the police.
abolished. Yes.
We're having an ACAB party.
I mean, I didn't want to say it, but you said it for me, so yeah.
I'm so happy you agree with me on abolishing the police.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I wasn't always there, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't always there, and I think that the thing is, it takes. I think, like, for many people, the idea of abolishment of police is so, like, crazy to think about because of the way that we've been taught to think about police, right? So I think that if we can, like, actually, like,
it's true though. Cats are beautiful.
They are. We do love cats. Also, I'm unsure what Ali means by UNDRIP. I guess, like, UNDRIP does provide, like, an interesting framework for, like, reparations and how they would work. But again, like, I think that the kind of issue with UNDRIP is that, why are you still here, bro?
I love these sorts of, like, right-wing people who come into my video comment, like, reply, and they start spamming. I love them because they give me views, and they give me traffic, and they give me attention, and they help boost this video. So if you really care about promoting your politics, stop commenting, stop watching, stop disliking. All of these things boost my metrics and provide my content.
That's true.
To people.
It's true. It's engagement.
Hate watching is beautiful, so I thank you.
Wow, that was beautifully said. But also, I guess, like, UNDRIP, it does provide an interesting framework, but I think that it's a bit too generalized to really, like, apply specifically to each nation. I think it does provide, like, good, like, language, like legal language that could be adopted into each nation's constitution to kind of, like, provide good frameworks. But I mean, like, look, like, BC adopted UNDRIP, right? Like, BC was the first Canadian province that adopted UNDRIP. Everyone celebrated, and then Wet'suwet'en happened, and John Hogan was like, RCMP into our territory. So, like, I think, like, again, see, like, so did it really work in the way we wanted it to? Like, not really, right? Of course, it's better than nothing because it still provides legal precedent into which we can
and exactly, and we can challenge hypocrites like John Hogan in the court systems now that we have this legal framework adopted.
Exactly, yeah. And which is, that's why I said way better than nothing, right? Way better than nothing. But it's really not. I don't think it's, like, the end goal. Again, I don't think it's the end goal what we're trying to do.
Also, it's something we definitely push for.
Oh, I miss you. I hope you're doing well.
Thoughts on abolishing the prison system?
Oh, well, I mean, according to Joseph, we should be armed. Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Sure. I don't know. Like, I was that supposed to make me recoil and get upset? I mean, like, if that's what it takes. Like, I'm not.
If being armed is what it has to be, like, in order for us to not have the police, fine. I can be a knife girl. I can deal with it.
Girl, we can just, like, okay, so here's the end goal. We steal all of the incels' katanas, like, all their swords, and that'll just be ours. We can just claim that. We can reappropriate that. So that's actually, like, a great idea. Jokes aside, rough timeline on abolishing police. What year would they no longer? Okay, that's a really tough question. I don't think we can put a timeline or even, like, have something concrete on that, because, again, so many people
require the left to actually get in power in some method to enforce that. Because while we have maybe our preferred ideal of, okay, yes, and we'll have a 30-year transition period, Maybe. I have no idea how long it will take because
Yeah, it's you like your katana. How will they cut their chicken nuggets? You're right. I don't know. Maybe if they ask nicely, I'll use the heel of my stiletto to cut it for them.
yeah.
Um,
I'll cut it with my whip, my barbed whip.
Also, again, Joseph, why are you here? Like, if you're just here to pick fights and not actually like engage with what we're talking about, why? Like,
Here's the thing. When prisons, when people come into prisons, they leave more violent, not less, under the current model.
This is true.
Like, why on earth would being forced to live in close proximity and under the current Canadian system, often under like straight up solitary confinement, which I think should be abolished. It's a form of torture, but that is the point. And constantly having to fight every day to survive. How on earth does that help transform you into a more peaceful, happy person?
Yeah, like, okay, I think the issue with people like framing like, abolishment of police and prisons as something radical is because of the way that we've been taught to think about other people, right?
Yeah.
Like we are taught to think that everyone is inherently selfish and bad, so that we need to have punitive measures to control people and discipline them into not acting out. But the truth is that has been like very much inefficient in keeping crime like actually like down, right? And like also when we talk about crime, we have to talk about the systemic things that lead up to crime, right? Okay, look, I'm pretty sure nobody wakes up unless you're super bored, you're some sort of white edgy boy that lives in Orleans or whatever. I don't think you wake up every day and you're like, you know what,
time for crime.
Do some spicy crime. Yeah, like I don't think anyone wakes up and just thinks that. Like they're put in positions where they have to do it to survive economically. If you want to take like for the specific example of like American like communities, right? So if you want to take that as an example, most people end up in organized crime because their alternative is slaving away at McDonald's and getting like $10 an hour for what, right? So their choice, because
or in America, like $7 an hour.
I said 10 because I was like, maybe they're in like a cooler state where $10 is like, wow, spicy, high minimum wage. But $7 even worse, right? Like my point is, if you want to talk about crime, you have to talk about the conditions in which people are put in that, like to make the decision to like do crime, right?
Yeah.
And if we address that and have communities take care of each other and not literally like take away resources that would allow for preventative measures to crime, then we would get less of it. It's kind of like, okay, if we keep funding police and prisons, it's like funding the aftermath of things. It's like funding the reaction to things going wrong. Well, yeah, exactly. It's like slapping a Band-Aid on stuff, right? Or it's like you keep buying more Band-Aids and you're like, I can't believe it. The Band-Aids keep getting soaked through with blood. How can we solve this problem? I know, just put more fucking Band-Aids on. Like I don't see how that's going to be an efficient solution. Right. And so, yeah, like, I don't know. Again, I understand that seems like a really like absurd and like radical idea.
It says being poor is no excuse for criminals.
It's no excuse. Oh, okay. Well, I guess they'll just die then.
Yeah, like
that's a lot of words to say. I don't care if poor people die. You could have just said that. You could have just straight up said that, and we would all have been honest with each other. Like, y'all can be honest here.
He's literally like Javert. It's like, I don't care if you're poor. You stole a loaf of bread. It's still theft. Go to jail for 10 years.
Yeah, if that's your stance, I will not say anything further because you just, again, like, that's a lot of words to say that you don't care about poor people. It could have just been straight up from the get-go, but that's fine.
We have to let Joseph Stolen continue his posting. He will continue to advance the metrics of this stream and continue to make sure that this radical leftist content gets more views. And we will go pick up his ignorant comments. And we won't even We'll just laugh at it later on. And that's
true.
your policy from now on. No more response to what he says. But we
that's true.
thank you for your continued viewership. I mean, it's amazing. Like, you have actually really helped my channel grow. I think you keep introducing me to all sorts of new subscribers, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah, and also, like, thanks for giving us topics that are relevant to our argument and for segueing it into things we actually want to say.
And honestly, you're making the right position look so much worse. Like, you could have made so many amazing arguments against prison abolition, but no, it's instead poor people have no excuse.
Because, like, there actually are reasonable arguments against at least like abolition right now, right? Because, like, again, like there's nuances to everything, and I'm always down to debate, but like, if that's your stance, that's fine. Okay, wait. So sorry, James says the main assumption is a criminal cannot properly function in organized society. Yeah, I mean, that is also like another main tenet of like,
it's they're a danger to society. We must remove them. And honestly, I think there probably are some people whose mental health issues, or just kind of because they've been indoctrinated to really hateful, horrible ideologies, they are a danger. And we do have to think of some way of helping them through their problems. However, I really don't think that throwing them in, you know, a small room for the rest of their life, hoping that they never escape, hoping that they don't hurt anyone else in there, hoping that when we finally let them out, they somehow change, is a really good way of dealing with that kind of deviance.
Yeah, that's also true. The sociologist versus perspective. Wait, I think, do you mean like psychological perspective?
No, he means like the sociologist's perspective versus the Fed's perspective.
Oh, the Feds. Okay, it's just because like
why crime occurs.
It's just because okay, that makes sense. It's just because typos. So I was like trying to piece that together. My 3 brain cells working overtime trying to piece that sentence together.
And Ali says, look at we have a roadmap there too. If you take that position, look at certain Nordic systems. Yeah, I mean, my boyfriend
too, yeah.
And it's a much better model than the one we currently have here, which is still so tied in to like Protestant ideas about punishment and mortification of the body.
Yeah. Again, like, if you want to make the argument that people who do dangerous things should not be allowed to move about in public, okay, fine. Yeah, that's a fair point, and that if they're harming themselves and others, they should probably be in an environment where they can be like supervised and made sure that they don't harm themselves or others, right? But yeah, like sticking them in a tiny cell with like hundreds of other people who are also stuck in tiny cells, basically treating them like literal animals, if not worse than animals, being shoved around and prodded like cattle, it's not going to like make sure that they integrate into society in any more functional manner. So like, it's not really doing anything to address like the structural roots that come out of why crime even happens, right? So yeah, it's the criminal.
Anyway, so I wanted to share a bit of good news that has come out. So the in Louisville, Kentucky, where there was 7 people who had been shot at and 1 who had been killed in the protest over George Floyd's death, the mayor fired the chief of police because he revealed while these shootings were happening, 2 of the police officers who were doing the shooting, oops, how mysterious, my body cam just turned off all on its own.
Oh, the battery dies. It happens, you know.
Yeah, it's just such a coincidence, you know?
I'm dying. Oh my gosh.
And I think it's really great that when you have action like that, when people who have obviously failed in their position face consequences for it and are not continued to, oh no, they're just on leave and then we can bring them back. They face absolutely no consequence, like less than a slap on the wrist for literally taking lives. And I don't know, I just, more of that. And also, let's see, do I still have it up here? I think it was on, yes. So the Derek Chauvin, you know, the murderous police officer who killed George Floyd, The trial has been moved to June 8th. So that's 7 days away. Hopefully we can get a prosecution as well. But I think I'm encouraged by the results of these protests when we went from him, facing no consequences to being fired, to being jailed, to being facing the court in a few days.
For sure. Have you guys seen the vid of the police defacing their own car? Yes, I have. I saw it on Twitter. It was extremely disturbing. Literally, the cops were in like reflective vests, so you can very clearly tell they were cops because like they were dressed like, again, like cops, and like they got out of that car, so presumably they were, unless somebody like there is a possibility that someone, I guess, hijacked the cop car and like hijacked the officers' uniforms.
Possibility that you
but it seems
Occam's razor has to apply.
Yeah,
it's an unlikely possibility that what's the more simple thing to understand? No, someone didn't mysteriously hide in a cop car, dress in their clothes, and then emerge. Aha! I'm going to pretend that I'm a police officer destroying my own car, when in actuality I'm a protester. Why wouldn't they just destroy the car?
Exactly. Like that's a lot of steps to go through, especially because like protesters wouldn't gain that much like marginally from doing that instead of just destroying them as a protester, because media's already villainizing them, right? So like they wouldn't gain much from going through all the effort of stealing a freaking cop car and then like putting on cop clothes. So like, but anyways, we digress. Like, yes, we've seen it. Very disturbing. Very glad it was caught on tape because again, like just further evidence of like how far police will go to fabricate evidence that protesters instigated violence when really they haven't.
Right? And also in Minneapolis, there was a very suspicious umbrella man who was going around smashing.
Yeah, that was really
weird. A store that was later burned down that night, and it was revealed that he actually was a police officer, judging from texts sent from people who were actually in the department, and by judging by the gear he was wearing, the gas mask he was wearing is this of the exact same kind issued to Minneapolis police officers. And then there's textual evidence from people in the Minneapolis police force saying, oh yeah, I know that guy. He's a bit of a loose cannon.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I haven't seen like further evidence from that because I know that there's also kind of like accusations going around that was like perhaps misinformation of the specific officer that they identified. Again, like if you want to send me that text on Twitter, I would be more than happy to look through it. Just I personally haven't seen it, so I don't feel like I should comment.
Yeah, I feel like it's potentially a misidentification, but I do definitely believe that he was a police officer, judging by his actions and the dispassionate way you see him smashing the windows. And I've posted plenty of videos on my Twitter account of a lot of these the horrible looting that's going on. Well, you look at the videos and whoa, I can see a badge in there. And then there's another video that I saw recently of police officers just dispassionately smashing a store, getting out of their cars and dispassionately smashing a store in uniform. So
so I mean, like, again, that's definitely things to consider too when like looking at all of what's like everything that's happening right now. But I do think that sorry. I mean, I will answer your question afterwards, Ali. But I do think that, like, even if it wasn't police doing this, like, even if we are gonna talk about the whole, like, what about the looters? What about the rioting, right? Okay. Most of the videos I've seen on Twitter of the protesters being violent have, for the most part, been in self-defense. Yeah. Again, I'm sure there are Occam's razor. I'm sure there are circumstances where maybe protesters have acted out, like, without like reason, and that perhaps they have instigated violence against like bystanders or like maybe other individuals that perhaps wasn't warranted. Okay, fine. Even if that was true, when you look at it from a utilitarian perspective and compare it to the actual amount of damage that police can do as an institution and as a group of people, it pales so much in comparison. Right? Like,
it's
it pales in comparison because look,
comparing comparing like a paper cut to having your arm bit off.
Yeah, sure, both can be painful, but one is significantly worse than the other. I actually compare it this way. Okay, if I were to try and like beat up some like UFC wrestler like Dwayne the Rock Johnson, feasibly, principally, me punching anybody without warranty is still bad. If I just tried to like sock Dwayne the Rock Johnson in the face, sure, maybe that wasn't warranted and probably not a wise thing for me to do, right?
Yeah.
But the amount of damage I, as a 5'2", tiny Vietnamese girl, could do to Dwayne would be nothing compared to what he could do to me if he fully punched me in the face full force. Like, I would be hospitalized for days, while if I try to punch him in the face, he might get a slightly sore jaw at best.
Oh no.
So,
Dwayne
so the fact
the Doc Johnson. Dwayne
Yeah.
the Clock Johnson.
So comparing looting to the kind of damages that police have done to protesters, and not just to protesters, police hit
To
an innocent
communities.
woman walking down the street completely uninvolved. She was literally completely uninvolved in the protest. She was literally buying groceries. She was just trying to stay in her lane. She got clocked in the middle of her forehead by a rubber bullet and was bleeding profusely. So you tell me about what the real issue is if we're comparing. If you really want to compare and weigh those two things on like a strictly utilitarian level. I don't even want to get into like the moral levels of like private property versus like lives. Like, even if we just put all of that aside, like morally speaking, ideologically speaking, if you literally look at the level of violence and compare it, the equivalency, it's literally not even the same. So I don't really know what else to say on that topic.
What even can you say?
Yeah, I think we said it all.
So I think I also want to talk about something else, and that is
yes,
curfews and the
damaging
things effect they have on people who are homeless and
for sure
documented, and for people who are people of color.
Wait, before we do that, can we answer Ali's question?
Of course, sure.
Oh my gosh, James, I'm dead. Yeah, watch out, Dwayne. I'm coming for your ass. But did you attend the Montreal protest, and what can you say? Okay, so I did not attend the Montreal protest. I just know this because I have friends in Montreal, and they were posting a lot on their social media about what happened.
Yeah, and I saw Fong posting on social media about the Montreal protest.
Yes, so I did go to the vigil for Regis in Ottawa yesterday, but it was a lot, like in terms of numbers, way less than the Montreal turnout. And again, to my knowledge, it didn't get violent because we dispersed very quickly, because we got knowledge that the police were planning to like come in to break us up at 4. So literally everyone started scattering by like 3:50. And I got there at like 3:45, so I was like there for a very brief amount of time.
Yeah, they're like there for 5 minutes, and they're like, "Oh, by the way, the police are going to crack down."
Exactly, and I was like, "Ooh," and I was there. Yeah, and I was there with like my other friend who's also like a woman of color, so we were like, "Well, we gotta skirt because this is not going to be a good situation." But yeah, so I think what we can expect for Ottawa on Friday, though, because I know that there's going to be a demonstration in front of the U.S. Embassy. So I honestly don't know what to expect, because since it's in front of an embassy, I don't know if that's going to be considered more of a threat, especially because Canada and the U.S. are, besties for life.
We have such a special relationship.
That and also anything in front or near Parliament is going to be considered more a risk. I know this because when the Wet'suwet'en like protests were going on, some of my friends documented, how the Indigenous youth and some allies were like dancing in the street, literally just vibing and having a good time. And there were legitimately snipers on the roof, and there was like hundreds of police surrounding them. There were like maybe like 20, 25 youth at best in the circle, just
and we're supposed to expect that it's the officers who feared for their lives.
Yeah, and like they were literally like surrounded, snipers on the roof. So like I have no clue what to expect. I really don't have any clue what to expect. But please be careful if you do plan to go. Please take care of yourself, and make sure that you have a backup plan for what happens if things do escalate. So yeah, I guess that's like the best way I can answer that question. Yeah.
Anyway, back into what I was saying.
Yes, back into
I
what
really want to go into the harmful
yeah,
effects of
curfews. Yes,
curfews, because that's the latest tactic that cities all across America, and I bet soon in Canada as well, are starting to enforce on their populace, which
for
is
sure.
be home in bed by 7 or the police will beat you up and put you in jail.
But this is a democracy, Lapis. What do you mean?
No, don't you
Police
so much authority. This is, we don't really have to be concerned about authoritarianism like all of those other countries.
police brutality in my Canada, it's more likely than you think.
But anyway, I just want to go into why it is so harmful. So first of all, the obvious, where exactly are homeless people supposed to go and not be falsely identified as breaking curfew?
Good question. Good question, Lapis. I sure as hell don't have an answer for that.
And if we just arrest every person we see on the street to enforce this curfew, and that includes a ton of homeless people who have then been thrown in jail and have to be subjected to horrible situation there, well, isn't it more likely that they're going to come out embittered against a society that arrests them for basically no reason? Literally trying to eke out a living.
Yeah, and even if they do happen to find their way to a shelter, most of these shelters are probably overrun because of COVID already.
Yes.
Because COVID, okay, because the issue with everything that's going on right now is that it's already a shit situation. But when you add on the fact that resources are already being literally stretched to the max because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and because of everything else, because of stress from COVID alone, and people being scared of
They want to self-isolate, and they're getting contradicting information from the government. Do we curfew, or do we stay as far apart from each other as possible? Because if we follow one, okay, I have to rush into this crowded, horrible homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Two, I try to save my life from this horrific disease. Oh no, you broke the law. Time to go to jail for 10 years.
Yeah, and even if I know that there is, again, I don't know the situation in Ottawa, but I know that in Montreal there is a designated self-isolation ward in Montreal's hospital.
Yeah.
I think it's the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, I believe. I could be wrong, but even so, again, how many people can even actually make it there? Because that's the other issue of transportation, right?
They don't have. How do they have the money to go all the way across the city? Where are they going to find it?
Yeah, because the Queen Elizabeth Hospital is pretty it's kind of it's not directly downtown in a way that is more accessible like shelters would be, right? So again, it's either do we go into a shelter so we don't break curfew and then get sick, or do we not? And then not even just thrown in jail, it could be worse, right? Because the way that police brutalize again homeless people is we talked about this earlier in the stream, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty serious.
And I want to point out that a lot of homeless shelters are operated by very conservative Christian types who do not accept queer people into their shelters, who discriminate against them.
That's also another dimension. Yeah,
like Salvation Army. No,
so where
trans people, you cannot go. And if Salvation Army happens to be the only shelter in the area, oh, you're shit out of luck. And what if, as a homeless person, how are you even supposed to hear this information? Everyone hears it from their phone.
Yeah, that too.
An update from the government. But homeless people, if they have phones, okay, well then that's good for them. But if they don't have a phone, how are they supposed to get this information? Libraries are closed down.
Exactly. Again, everything's already bad, but because of the pandemic, things are infinitely worse in terms of how they're supposed to, get the resources they need and get updated. What do you think?
The aftermath would look like? What will the post-COVID world look like?
Yeah. Okay. Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of differences. I feel like a lot of things like the handshake, the traditional doorknob will fall out of fashion as a vector of infection. People will become a bit more skittish around mass crowds.
Yeah, I think that too. Wow, maybe people will finally start washing their hands properly.
I know. I was so shocked by the number of people who are like, "Wow, I just started like washing my hands. I never did it before." I'm like, I touched that hand.
You're like, mm. You're like, and I no, but like even if they do, like the amount of times I've seen people like coming out of the stall and just like for like 4 seconds and leaving, I'm like, well.
Oh, Ali has a good point. There's going to be a huge conservative movement. They're like, oh yeah, we got to get
Yeah,
back
that
to
too.
government. Even though personally, I think the spending was completely necessary. I'm not necessarily how sure radicalizing to the right will work in their favor, because the conservatives did support a lot of the packages that Trudeau passed.
Well, yeah,
And
because
they are a negative example of the People's Party of Canada to see, oh yeah, Canadians love voting for far right parties. They just do so well electorally.
yeah, but I mean, I guess I think I think Canada's political spectrum is already a lot shifted further left than America, first of all. So that's kind of like a different circumstance in the political climate. Also, we're not a bipartisan system, right? Like we have more than 2 feasible large political parties, even though only 2 parties have really ever won government or have won in government. But doesn't
parties before
exactly. And like we on a provincial level, there's parties that aren't liberal or conservative that have power, especially in BC. Like, okay, I'm sorry, but the day that BC has a conservative provincial government is literally the day we are confirmed to be in a simulation. Like confirmed. This is the Matrix.
Yeah.
And we're all
now,
just
to be fair,
like,
you could say BC in like the 80s might have had a very conservative government, because just like California, they used to be conservative not that long ago. Like they elected, oh, what was it? It was such a useless party. It was like Social Credit or something like that, where it's like, oh,
I don't think I've heard of that. That's so weird.
Yeah, well, the Social Credit Party was something that was absurd. And it was like a further right than the Conservatives Party that existed. It was formed in Alberta, as all evil things are, and then spread all over the country. And then it did like somewhat well to the extent that it got 11% of the vote in the federal election. But then it split into 2 because the Anglos were too anti-Quebecois for the Quebecois members of the Social Credit Party.
Okay.
And then the Anglo Social Credit Party died almost immediately, and the Quebecois Party lasted on for another decade before succumbing to the fate and getting replaced by the Bloc.
Okay, so the Social Credit Party kind of started out as a, like, I don't know how to phrase it. Like,
think of like the Reform Party.
Think of what?
The Reform Party in the 90s. Like that kind of level of like, okay, we're further to the right than the Conservatives, who were a bit more like populist-y. And then gradually it died out as everyone was like, wow, you're completely useless, aren't you?
But yeah, so just to make sure I got this right, it started as like a
Josiah is right, we should switch to ranked ballot. Yes.
Yes, I agree. I saw that comment. Yes. Electoral reform. That's another whole topic that I don't want to
Trudeau, he missed it so badly. We could have had, an eternal okay-ish government. Like we didn't need to ever return to a conservative majority, but because Trudeau's like, I think I'm polling very well. I don't see a need to change the electoral system.
Again, I don't want to delve into it too much because 1, it makes me sad, and 2, I think it takes away time that we could use to talk about other important things. But yeah, I will definitely say this. Yes, to a ranked ballot system, we should have had like proportional representation like ages ago. And it's going to be one of those things that every single politician talks about but never does. Like I think that every country has one of those issues where every single politician swear up and down that
we're going to do something about this. We swear.
And one of those policies is climate change. Without fail. And the second one, for Canada specifically, is electoral reform. Every single PM that has gone into power has been like, we should talk about electoral reform.
Yeah, and talk about it, but not do anything about it. And then they do like one poll and they're like, okay, that's enough.
Well, that's enough reforming for me today. I'm tired. I'm going to go sleep. All that reform really tuckered me out, I'm just... tuck myself in. Liberals can never be chosen.
It's true. They are actually sneaky. They're a corrupt party.
You know what makes me laugh? I was talking to my sister about this the other day. But I was like, the one thing that leftists and like conservatives or people on the right can agree with is that we don't trust liberals for such different reasons, which I think is absolutely
it's so funny because like conservatives are like, oh, the liberals, they're so radical, almost socialist with all of these radical ideas like abortion rights and like, oh my goodness, we're not going to tax the poor as much as we tax the rich. What is this madness? And then leftists are like, can you please not build another pipeline? Just please.
And not even just that, but like leftists listening to conservatives being like, oh, you're socialist. And we're like, yeah, we wish. We freaking wish. Liberals would.
You're speaking of please stop.
Ali asks, should we be protesting police brutality and racism against indigenous people at the protest, or is it more of a place to center in Black lives? Definitely centering Black lives. Definitely centering Black lives, especially because this whole kind of like current movement is being spurred by George Floyd's death. I mean, obviously the Black Lives movement has existed for quite a while now, right? I think it's really spurned from maybe like Ferguson, I'm thinking. I'm not sure, but like the hashtag specific Black Lives Matter. But there's always been movements talk about police brutality in the context of brutalizing Black bodies, right? And I think that like obviously it's tied to police brutality and racism against Indigenous peoples because there are Afro-Indigenous peoples too. There's Black Indigenous peoples too, right? Like that's something that also has to be discussed. But since, again, I'm not in that community, I don't feel comfortable speaking completely on it. But I'm just saying, as someone who does follow Black Indigenous, like a Black Indigenous person on Instagram, I've seen them talk a lot about their like Blackness and their indigeneity. So I know that that's also something to be considered. So it's not necessarily like, so obviously, like, it's not like Black peoples and Indigenous peoples are two separate groups. It's just in this context, it is about Black lives specifically because of George, and not just because of George, because of Reggie, because of Breonna Taylor, because of Tyler McDudd. Like it's been just so many Black people.
I know, in such a short series of days.
Exactly, it's in such a short span of time. It's been overwhelmingly Black people, right? So I think that that's truly what this is about. We can have other discussions tying it into like.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there are intersections of this issue because
100%.
like Indigenous people are victims of police brutality so much. What was that movement called? Silent No More?
Idle No More.
Idle No More. It was something like that. I was just like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's 11, something in my brain wouldn't click. Anyway,
it's fine.
Idle No More faced a really nasty police backlash. And I think that, the police's apathy in regards to Indigenous lives and straight up often malevolence, like we've seen with the Starlight Tours, is something that cannot be swept under the rug. It can't just be 100%. Disregarded.
For sure. It's just like...
We do have to understand that who are being killed in this moment, Black people, Black bodies are the ones that are being tormented by this system the most at this particular moment. And so we shouldn't steal the thunder from other communities and other issues when talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. I guess like, and I know that there are Indigenous, like non-Black Indigenous people who have spoken up and said that we stand in solidarity and we urge our community to understand that this is not the time to be talking about Indigenous and police relations, even though there are parallels and there are connections, specifically united around like Black people's relationship with the police. I also think that at the end of the day, we're all like interconnected, right? Like I think that I talk about this a lot, but like I don't think that we can fairly say that we are truly liberated or free until until we all are, or to me, until the most oppressed within our society is, right? And as it stands right now, it's definitely Black peoples in many ways. It's Black peoples, whether they're trans or they are femme or they are just Black men. I think that they have there's no safe place to be Black is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And so
Yeah, and although we can also say there's no safe place to be Indigenous, I feel like that's why the term
that's also
BIPOC
applicable.
has emerged, because it's like,
Yes.
okay, of racialized communities, like, yes, Asian people, Southeast Asian people,
Yeah, for sure.
even, to an extent, groups that look white get racialized and treated badly.
100%
However,
white.
the people who are in, the most marginalized racial demographic are BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Yeah, I mean, again, Indigenous and Black people were racialized differently. So I think that's why that
There's a very
acronym is
different
applicable.
kind of thing going on, of course.
Because I think that there's even parallels. Okay, so there's discussion around like Latinx and how like that is described, because within the Latinx community, technically it's not an ethnicity. Technically, Latinx is more so talking about nationality and language. But I do, because like within Latinx communities, there are like Afro Latinx people, right? Again, and there's also there's Indigenous Latinx people too. So like it is a discussion to be had as well. But even then, I think that the racialization of Latinx peoples is different from like Asian people, for example. But it's like,
and if you look
again,
at police brutality statistics, the amount of Latino people who are arrested by the police is roughly in proportion to their percentage of the American population, whereas white people are underrepresented, and Native and Black people are largely overrepresented.
Yeah, so I think that, again, overall, though, I do think that this can open up greater conversations about police brutality against other minorities, especially against Indigenous people, too. I think this is a good starting point to have those conversations, hopefully. But yeah, but if you are going to vigils or protests, definitely center the Black Lives Matter movement for unity and for
and
solidarity.
just as because like they've done so much good work recently, and we really want to bring attention to their struggles. And
that too, yeah.
I just think it's like it's a simple thing that we can do to show that we care.
Yeah, 100%.
And there is like I feel like, what do you feel about the idea of a kind of a rainbow coalition against police brutality? Well, yes, of course, we know like Black and Indigenous people are the main victims. Like Latino people, Black, Indigenous, Asian, queer, all of these sorts of people getting together and saying, look, you as an institution you are the main tool the state is using to oppress us, and you are outdated. Yeah. What do you think about that idea?
What do I think about that idea? I don't know. I think that, honestly, in an ideal world, obviously, like, those divisions wouldn't exist. In an ideal world, colonialism and white supremacy would not have succeeded in dividing us and fracturing us. And we would have seen from the very beginning very clearly that the other groups are not the issue, right? We would have already united against a common enemy if white supremacy and colonialism wasn't so effective in implementing what they did. In order to have that coalition be truly efficient, again, like, okay, here's the thing with why I think social change takes so long. It's not just about external action and external pressuring of the organizations and the institutions that do this harm, right? It's also about how we handle our interpersonal kind of like wounds with people from these communities. Because I know for a fact that I can just speak from experience that there's heavy anti-Blackness within the Asian community. And how can we have a successful coalition when Black people don't feel like they are welcome or invited into primarily Asian spaces or like around other like people of color, right? Like we can't successfully have like
without addressing these things.
That, like, solidarity.
Of course, there is racism among the queer community. I mean, there's many people that are like, yes, we must have cops at Pride. They will help everyone feel safer. No.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, and again, like, there again with the idea of intersections that Ali brought up, yeah, like there's Two-Spirit and queer, indigenous peoples, and Black peoples that, again, they also have both of those identities, right? So it's like, in a way, I think that it's useful to keep in mind, but it's not necessarily, I think, crucial to always mobilize in the form of who we are to each other. I think it's more useful to mobilize as what do we want, and are
Yeah,
those
and what we
desires
want,
similar?
is for the institution of policing to, at the very least, become less toxic, and as I
Yes.
think both you and I want, for it to end.
Yeah, and for maybe even something less about something to end, but perhaps it's better to start asking people, what is it the world that they want to create? Like,
That
if it's not this one, what is it that we want to create,
Yes,
right? And
yes,
I think
thank
that
you, thank you.
wow, I say
Yes.
something that's worth 2 brain cells and laugh is like, Ron, you're a genius. But thank you. That's very. I feel very
But
flattered.
no, I mean, I'm just so used to people being like, abolish this, abolish that. And yes,
Right.
abolishing things is awesome, but we must point out, what do
Yeah.
we want to build? What vision do
Yes.
we want to show people for the future? And this is so
Exactly.
crucial because people are tempted to reject the ideas of abolishing this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
They
Exactly.
see all of these oppressive structures. Like, I've lived in this my whole life. I cannot conceive of another world. We need to paint that vision. We need to show them that things don't have to be this way. And it's
Exactly.
easy to
Yeah.
point out, yes, this must end. Yes, that must end. And it must end. But how
And
do we make it? And how do we build something from the ashes of the ugly old?
honestly, I will be honest with you. I don't know what that world looks like right now. I'm gonna be real. I don't know if it looks like communism or socialism or any other ism. I
Yeah,
just know that it has to be better than what it is right now. And maybe that's like a
yeah.
vague goal. That's not official and rational.
It's
You
not theoretical,
know?
Fog. You haven't.
Yeah.
No, haven't you read any theory?
Well, clearly, I'm just some dumb girl with a
Have
scarf
you
in her
even read
hair.
Deleuze?
Yeah, like I said, I'm just some dumb girl with a scarf in her hair. Clearly, I haven't read any theory or know anything about anything ever. But
Yes.
if my thoughts were coherent at all, I think that something that I actively want in terms of like what we want to build is a community, and what community really looks like and what community is really rooted in. Because I think the issue is right now we live in a world that incentivizes the breakdown of community. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the conservative talking points of, oh, the queers are ruining the family institution and
Oh no, the
therefore
family unit,
ruining
it's
the
breaking
community.
apart. What about
Yeah,
marriage? Why aren't more
I'm not
people getting married and having a
like I'm not
nuclear
talking.
family with a boy and a girl, and they stay a boy and a girl, and then they marry and produce more boys and girls?
I'm not talking about that kind of community, that kind of strict, narrow definition of community. I'm talking about community that I think for me, what community means is a group of people that takes care of each other, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's a
we
nice,
don't,
a simple definition. It doesn't need highfalutin words. Um,
and it's not about like, and I think it's rooted in the idea that we don't ask what the other person can do for us to help. When we see someone in need, we just help them.
yeah,
Obviously we help them to the degree that we can. Like obviously we have to sustain ourselves too. Like I'm not saying in this world I force everyone to be like draining of their resources and like
assimilate into
always,
the flog.
yeah, like that's not, I don't want that either. But I just mean like right now as it stands, I think people are so hesitant to help others because we've been taught and socialized to believe that we must view others in terms of what they can do for us first before we
Yeah,
lend.
you're a competitor. We have to look out for number one. Greed is good.
Exactly. And I just think that in this world, hopefully, that we are going to build afterwards and that are like building kind of like after, it will be rooted in that kind of like taking each other. Um, Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And also the concept, we can talk about James's comment on the greater dangers, and also we can tie that into his question about self-policing, if you want to
Yeah,
address
I
that.
did actually was thinking that like what I see as kind of a good alternative to policing as it exists right now was the kind of communal self-help and self-protection we saw under the Black Panthers in America in the late 60s. I thought they really had a good thing going there, uniting all, with people of, all different races and protecting their communities against, on one hand, predatory gangs and on the other hand, the police.
Yeah, I think that the thing with that though is that they were armed, right?
Exactly.
I think that's another whole, again, that's a whole nother topic. I don't think I have the mental space and or
Now we
energy
can
to
talk
delve
about,
into.
does gun control make it easier for leftists to wield power in society? Does it make it
Right.
harder? It's a whole
That's a
topic. And I
yeah, it's
think
a
that the answer will vary depending on the country or region you live in. And you kind
yeah,
of have to
like
sculpt a response that is dependent on your community.
I think that's true of any type of like revolutionary like change, right? I think it's always has to be contingent on the consequence, like on the context and the circumstances that you're in, because it's not a one size fits all you can just throw around everywhere, right? Like it's something I
Yeah.
think that needs to be implemented according to the like
What are the
appropriate
community's needs? And community
circumstances.
self-defense will look very different in a rural community or
Yeah.
on a host reservation, because I think I want to live in a world where there are no reservations. Um,
Yeah, that's true. And I guess like in
um,
terms of like
or as in
self-belief.
like a massive urban center. People will have different needs in those communities, and the self-policing that they'll get will look very different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that in this case, perhaps maybe this is just my personal opinion. Again, lab is like you don't have to like agree, but from where I stand, I think that for right now, in like the near future, for self-policing or some or like in order to like address those like greater dangers that James talks about, I think we have to consider the fact that we will probably still need arms. Like we will still definitely need like some sort of like weaponry because that is like within the definition of defense or attack involves some type of weapon, right? Like
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's guns or swords or whatever, like I think it's you unless you are Dwayne the Rock Johnson and just have like gigantic fists that can break
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
anything.
I don't
I don't
necessarily
think
believe in like, oh yes, all guns will be banned. That seems to be
yeah, that
an
seems pretty
impossibility, and it wouldn't necessarily be an ideal. Do I really like the American model either? Any private citizen is allowed to buy whatever the hell they want.
yeah.
Not really either. To me, that seems like a way to give right-wing militias a ton more power that they can use to act as proxies for the police, and not really a way to empower people to take self-defense into their own hands.
Yes.
Do I necessarily want to be, a gun toter, like policing my community? No, not really. And there is the argument that, oh yeah, the only way to have an effectively, to have no kind of hierarchies of power is for everyone to have the same sort of arm. And that to me is not necessarily a satisfactory answer. Like, I feel like there's tons of people who don't
This is
who don't want to have an arm, who are depressed or something. And
yeah,
well, if they turn it on themselves, is that really any sort of benefit or protection to them? Um,
exactly. I think that okay, so in terms of what Ali has said about how the police are defined as a group of people who employ legal violence and the threat of violence to enforce laws, then removing violence from the police changes what they are fundamentally. Yeah, this is true. I think that, again, like, I'm not quite sure how to answer this question because I think that there's a lot of nuance and there's a lot of things that we have to discuss.
was that a question? I thought of it more as like Ali's thoughts on police
Oh,
abolitionism.
yes, I agree. I just mean like the question of self-policing and like what we will, because and how that's contextualized within Josiah's question of what is the alternative policing for law enforcement. Sorry, like I'm like reading the comments and also somewhat filtering them in my own thoughts to try and address them. So I'm not like flag posting enough. This is an issue that I have when I speak sometimes where I will just internalize words and try and like respond to them without actually like flagging what I'm responding to. Oh yeah. Okay, so again, like it sounds like such a long stretch, which is I guess also why people think that abolition is such a like revolutionary thing, is because to be able to make sure abolition of the kind of institution is successful, you have to address all the other evils that exist, right? You have
Yeah.
to address all the other systemic things, which is like it's a large
Capitalism,
thing to take on.
you know,
Like that's a
queerphobia. Like there's, I can go through a
there's like
laundry list of issues because there are
I was gonna
so
say,
many.
and I think that yeah, it's true that by like removing that kind of legal violence and threat of violence, you definitely change something fundamental, right? But it's like, why do we still think that? Okay, I think the issue is right now the default is violence / threat of violence, right? Like that's the default accepted. Like we accept that there's like a constant omniscient presence that could legitimately descend on any of us at any given time with a bunch of arms and literally legally kill us for no other reason other than the fact that they thought we could have been a threat. Like right now, if the police bust
They
down my
feared
door,
for their lives.
yeah, like right now, the police busted down my door and killed me. Like
Oh, we just feared for her lives. There
nothing.
was a person of color living in our general vicinity. It was just so scary.
Like there's literally like yeah, legally they don't really have to justify it. They could just say something like, "Oh well, she was on the internet speaking some of her opinions on certain things, and we deemed that a national security threat." Like
it was just so scary for us. And
yes, they legitimately
just posted under our screen name, Joseph Stolen.
Yeah, like legitimately could do that, but and I would have nothing. And like no one would bat an eye because that's what we've been socialized and conditioned to think is the norm and is how things should operate, right? But I think like in the terms of an alternative to policing, maybe it just looks like using violence as the absolute last resort. Maybe like the action of patrolling is still similar to what police do, because I think that there's certainly like things or functions that police are told that they do or that falls under police jurisdiction right now that we could probably still continue to or like have to continue to address, right?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest things that needs to change is that we need to have a lot less laws and regulations that actually don't really benefit the community and more benefit property or, you know, some sort of bizarre moral idea that everyone should act in a certain way. And if we remove those sorts of regulations, I feel like it would extremely reduce the encounters we need to have with any sort of legal authority.
Yeah, and also like again, like to the question about like human trafficking and how institutions continue to regulate that. I think it's a black box and it's kind of a chicken and egg question as to whether or not institutions worsen or alleviate issues such as human trafficking, right? Because I would like to think that there are bodies within like law enforcement that aren't perhaps like the police, like other, because like law enforcement's a broad umbrella. And I know that there's like the bureaucratic side of law enforcement that isn't about like using guns or like violence in that sense. But I do think that in terms of like using the existing institutions to deal with human trafficking, again, I guess in terms of harm reduction and like trying to like make sure that we do the least amount of harm in getting to where we want to, like getting to like the end goal, right? I think that I guess like we will have to concede some sort of like organization or some sort of force that does have some type of weapon or some type of like
authority, I guess.
Authority to use force. But I think like the authority to use force and violence should not be like
exclusive,
contingent and exclusive to the existing bodies of law enforcement, if that makes any sense, and especially to like police as an institution as it is right now. Because once you become a police officer or like once you like go through the training it takes to become a cop, there's very little room for deviation from what they tell you you're supposed to do, right? It's extremely and strictly hierarchical, and there's really like you as an individual don't really have that much power to assess for yourself if the situation warrants the use of force or not, if that makes any sense. Like, you're taught and you're told that given any circumstance, you are allowed to use force. Like, that is drilled into your head. That's literally drilled into your head from
And
day
have you
one.
seen some of these like cops that are practically salivating to beat people up before protests?
Yes, I have. And that's like extremely
And here's
terrifying.
another fun thing. American police do not actually have an obligation to protect and serve. It was legally decided in the court that they do not.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what? How does that even make any sense?
Oh, no, because if they had an obligation to protect and serve, oh my goodness, that might leave them accountable to the people. We can't have that. And here's another thing with, at least in regards to the human trafficking thing. I don't think that the state necessarily does a very good job of it at present in regards to the present institutions. I mean, look at Jeffrey Epstein. Like, he was in custody and everything.
That whole box of worms.
And then, oh my gosh, he mysteriously is just like, yeah, he committed suicide. He took him off watch for a day and now he's dead. Oh no, what a tragedy. What a shame he couldn't testify against all of those politicians and important businessmen who had had contacts with him. It was really such a mysterious and unfortunate accident.
Oh my gosh.
Josiah is talking about how in Wellington, the police only carry tasers and batons. And well, that is a much better system than immediately jumping to tear gas and 40 millimeter bullets.
That's true. Or, real bullets that...
We do have to point out that tasers have been fatally used before in Canadian policing.
Yes, that's true. Again, like, I think in this instance, it's worth it to mention, obviously, anything can be fatal, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's probably always going to be some sort of fatality that occurs if there is any sort of law, but if there isn't any sort of law, then there's going to be a hell of a lot more fatalities. So
yeah, exactly. So like, and again, like, look, humans are creative. Anything can be a weapon. Literally anything and everything, right? So like, it doesn't really, but that doesn't change the fact that, yeah, obviously, like, carrying a semi-automatic is going to be very different from having a baton. And the amount of people and the amount of people you can harm in a short span of time is going to be very different, right? And I wanted to respond to James's comment about how weakening institutions doesn't always lead to a desirable outcome. Yeah, that's valid.
It is true. Like, I think a textbook example would be the welfare state. People,
it's definitely a balancing act.
People off of welfare and make them more productive members of society. Did that really help the communities involved? Or did it just result in people getting less support than they actually needed and finding themselves in even worse straits?
Yeah, exactly. Again, like, it's all about, like, because we still need bandages and stuff to stop the bleeding or temporarily stem it, right? So we can't just let it freely bleed out. We can't just, like, leave the wound there, like, oh well, since we can't stitch it up, since we don't have the materials to stitch up the wound, let us just bleed out to death. Like, clearly that's not the solution. But yeah, like, it is definitely a balancing act of how much gauze and bandages we can apply before we have to start stitching it up, because there's only so much that we can do in terms of applying bandages and gauze and, like, gauze.
Before you just need to look at the wound and say, okay, this needs surgery. We can't just
or some sort of like further medical intervention, right? Like, so I think it's about taking on realistic goals to weaken aspects of institutions that are immediately harmful. And then in terms of addressing larger questions about, like, what kind of institutions or what kind of, like, organizations will replace it afterwards have to be thought of as well at the same time that we try to address the, like, harmful aspects of institutions, right? Like, I think we have to do both. I think we have to at once think of better solutions and try and come up with better solutions every single day, while also having to, like, address the reality of, like, the institutions we do currently have. And yeah, that's a lot of work. And that's why sometimes I just watch Netflix for 3 hours, because I don't want to think about that forever. So
and that's, another thing when it comes to protests is, the emotional burnout.
Yeah, and not just like protests, but like just like trying to do any
Or
sort of like
politics in
social.
general. Even
Yeah, just like
relationships can sometimes result in emotional burnout. And you're like, okay, I'm glad that I
facts.
talked to you, but now I need space. I need to recharge.
I
I
don't
do not
know
have
why that
energy
reaction.
today.
I don't know why that reaction was so funny to me, but it was. Yeah, it is definitely a sliding scale that needs to be balanced, and it's difficult
Mhm.
to, for the most part. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, there's always going to be people, right? Shifting police culture and its offenders will take decades. Yeah. See, that's the thing, right?
And that's kind
Is
of
that,
why I'm like, do we really want to wait around for that?
well, yeah, we can't. We have to do, again, like, we can't wait around for it, but we have to actively try and push
Yeah,
it forward,
because
right?
it will slide backwards if we don't. Because we've already
Yeah,
seen what
really.
a pernicious institution policing really is for.
Yeah. And I do think, though, that, yeah, that's absolutely why we need to do the work. And I do
Mhm.
think, though, that there is, okay, this is also another sliding scale type of issue, right? In terms of like how do you engage with people who don't agree with you? That is the eternal question of everyone and anyone who wants to talk about politics,
Yeah.
right?
And
It's always about like, how do we have discussions that can actually be productive? First of all, I think that it's worth it to recognize there's just some people that just won't change their mind. There's
yeah,
just some people that literally, no matter how much you talk to them, no matter how long you like spend in terms of like elaborating your answers in a way
they
that is
deliberately won't
both
understand
coherent and
you
logical.
and will
Yeah, and
just
they'll
be
like,
kind of cruel and nasty. And the best
yeah,
response with those people is just like, okay, you're not worth my time. Block, block.
yeah, because like at that point, I mean, like it's up to everyone to decide for themselves where that bar is for them in terms of like how much
Mhm.
that they can sustain in terms of like conversation and like debate with
Yeah.
someone who doesn't agree with them. That's like I think dependent on everyone. Like it's not everyone that can do that, and not everyone wants to. Again, arguably not great if you just simply don't want to ever engage with someone that disagrees with you. But
I mean,
um,
it sounds like a really sad and scary world.
yeah, it really does. Like, ooh, don't want that. And like, I definitely have friends who disagree with me or who like don't agree with all of my takes. But I definitely do have some boundaries I draw in terms of the values that I think are like uncompromisable. Right? Like, there are things I'm not willing to compromise on, and I will stand by that. Like, I absolutely will stand by that. And there's poor people, and there's people who have more lenient boundaries in terms of things that they are okay with their friends disagreeing with. Yeah, that's fine.
Hmm. To
That's
me,
chill.
I
That you do you. I'm
yeah,
not here to tell
I
anybody how to be
have
friends or what to do with
very
their life.
in the way of like I talk to almost anyone on the political spectrum that isn't, a fascist. Um,
Yeah, that's yeah, me too. I'll definitely talk to anybody. Yep.
I don't usually if someone asks me, okay, hey, so and so has been treating me really badly, I do tend to try to stick up for that person who has been treated badly.
Mm,
It is my
for sure.
instinct, and I feel like it would be kind of cowardly for me to do what I've done in the past, which is just, well, speak up for yourself. It's not really my job to police all of the people I know in my life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, there's definitely a way to do it that takes into account like how your like friends feel about like your other friends, right? That's definitely like something that's
Yeah, and
important.
if I have one friend that's hurting all of my other friends, it sometimes you do need to take a step back and be like, okay, I need to reevaluate this relationship because obviously it's not it's not helping my other friends. And if I have the values that I say I do, I should stand up for my other friends and not just let this person who's clearly bigoted and clearly mean spirited walk all over my other friends in the name of peace.
Yeah, exactly that too. And like also what Ali said about how like they couldn't associate with a transphobe. Yeah, like that makes so much sense. Like yeah, anyone who's willing to engage in open, rational conversation, sure. Like I honestly feel like I have a pretty high like tolerance for people who like don't hold the same views as me or who might hold like very opposing views to me. Like, sure, I may get passionate, I might raise my voice, and y'all might get alarmed at my tone. You may clutch your pearls at me speaking not in a very nice, docile manner.
Fawn,
Wow,
where
so
is your
scary.
civility? Where are your
But
manners?
I'll still talk to them. I'll still talk to you. Like, we'll still have a conversation.
You just may
Um,
not like it.
yeah. You might not like my tone. You might not like the things I say, but I'll still talk to you. Like, I won't immediately disengage, is what I'm trying to say. Um, but yeah, like the ability to disagree is often like a privilege. Yeah, I mean, like,
It depends. To an extent, people
it
in
definitely does
marginalized
depend.
backgrounds always have to deal with this sort of bullshit.
Yeah, that's true. But also, like, there are definitely people in marginalized communities who
That
completely
don't
like,
want to have to deal with it, and so they choose, hey, I'm opting out. Bye. And I feel
yeah,
like
that too. Yeah.
it's just like people have different responses to being in the situations they're in. And while, I'm hesitant to say that, to talk to people who have really nasty values, you must be privileged. I'm hesitant to go down
Yeah,
that road.
no, I don't think
Um,
don't want to go down that road either.
um,
Um,
I, oh, I do think that when you ask someone who is at the intersections of a lot of different kinds of struggles to take on the work of talking to someone, there's a whole other bunch of baggage that comes with it than you would if, say, a white guy wanted to debate another awful white guy about their opinions.
LMAO, yeah, I mean that's definitely true. Also, I don't know what you. I also agree with Ms. Happy that fascists are mostly arguing in bad faith and don't give their real points. Yeah, that's also
It's
for
true.
my
They hide behind a lot of like meme stuff and like,
yeah.
I'm not actually talking about the N word when I use this euphemism. It's oh, shut up,
Yeah, or like,
go away.
or like
You're interested. You're
it's like very
obviously
like
lying.
it's like a lot of circling and back and forth that just doesn't make that much sense. So like that's also true. Also,
So
I'm curious as to what you mean by lacking values, James. And that's interesting to me. Um, yeah, I mean, we are all just people asking questions. I think at the end of the day, that's also true,
yes,
James.
we all
But
are
yeah,
terrific answers from Fong. She
sorry.
will give them all.
For me specifically, y'all are in bad shape if you're gonna be asking
Yeah,
me
just
questions.
Fong has all the answers. Just ask her everything. Hey, Fong, what tea flavor should I pick today?
Again, can't guarantee how your life's gonna turn out if that's the road you're gonna go
Success is not
down.
guaranteed if you follow the Fong model.
Yeah. So again, not a one size fits all. If you or a loved one have been damaged by Fong's advice, please consider. Oh, you know, like that meme of like if your loved one have been affected by meso for like the drug name. Like I feel like an infomercial should be made about me, and like if you or your loved one have been like has their life ruined by Fong's advice, you should seek legal recompense through this.
I just love those sorts of. This is so off topic, but those sorts of like pill or drug or even like beauty product commercials that are like happy, beauty, beautiful. Side effects may include blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, you're like, oh.
And they give you like 5 paragraphs of all the horrible things that could happen to you if you use their product just to get a good night's sleep. I'm like,
you're like, damn, I don't want to die for wanting to sleep though. You're like, shit.
it's fine.
Maybe that's not such a great call. Also, yeah, Ali, I think I know what you mean by like white women and fragility. You don't have to talk to me about white women and fragility. This is a conversation I've had a lot of times.
She's in the know. She has been known.
I've had enough. I really have, honestly. Like, I just can't. Like, then, yeah. More on that coming in our.
Yeah, we'll have an anti-Karen action stream.
Oh yeah, anti-Karen action stream. I'm dying. I feel like though we should save that for the podcast.
Oh, probably. Oh, fun.
Yes, we forgot to mention
name dropping it. Yeah,
I know,
so if you loved our style and our communication, this is only a prelude for the conversations we will have and the shade we will throw.
And the Karens that we will speak of.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the midst of producing a podcast about a lot of things that we talked about on the stream in like greater detail. It'll also have production by my sister Ling, because she's lovely, and maybe if she has time, I can get her to like come on to a stream with us sometime too, so y'all can meet her and see how cool she is. But yeah, she's gonna be behind a lot of the production behind it. Yeah, and it's gonna be a good time. But in regards to is it gonna be on Spotify? I think
It's gonna be
so.
on
Again,
everything.
we're gonna try and get on every single platform possible. Like we're gonna, Lapis, we should make a MySpace.
Of course, MySpace is still relevant.
And put it on MySpace.
Have you ever seen that picture where it's like out the Iraq War in MySpace, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is so 2006. I literally cannot.
That's actually so ridiculous. SoundCloud, yes, definitely.
I'll really track it down because
great.
it's such a beautiful moment of like just a little snapshot of how internet culture used to be like 14 years ago.
That's actually freaking hilarious. But yeah, we definitely should make MySpace and put it on there. And yes, don't worry, we will call all of y'all white ladies out. No worries about that. I will ensure that happens. But yes, yeah, I remember the old blog.
Oh my goodness, that blog.
Listen, yes.
That
I'm
blog
so sad. I literally never ended up writing anything. That's the gag.
I wrote a one issue on the blog, and unfortunately, I do not want to revisit it because it is under the dead name. But
that's true. That is unfortunate. Okay, here's the freaking gag about that. I came up with the freaking name for that blog. I was one of the people who came up with the ideas for the blog. How many articles did I write for that blog? 0. So that gives you an insight into teenage Fwong's work ethic. So I for sure will be better with that. Once we actually start our podcast, we will also have a blog for it because we will include a lot of links. And we want you to be able to access them easily.
Mm-hmm. And every now and then, because we are both writers, one of us might decide, hey, time to drop a random essay with no real cohesion. And you will have to read it.
Exactly. And I haven't written something in so long. Like,
yes,
actually
and
it would be nice to start reading again.
I do have a Tumblr. I have a Tumblr. And it started out as like a Tumblr.
I have not visited my Tumblr in a long ass time, and I definitely don't plan to anytime soon. It's a trove of memories that are not always the best, I will say. I'm sorry, I'm just reading through the comments that I'd missed earlier.
Super Hulock. Oh my goodness.
Super Hulock.
That was the thing.
Cursed. Super
yeah, well, it's better than what I created my Tumblr account to do. Back then, I was like, oh, I'm going to be like a right-wing parody of left-wingers.
Ew! I remember that. Please stop. Please. I don't want to resuscitate that version of Lapis. She shall be dead forevermore. Please don't bring the ghost of that. Yes. Please.
Anti-SJW Lapis has been staked and buried and has her head cut off.
Yeah, please. I don't want to Ouija board that Lapis back to life. That would be so bad. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. And yeah. Thank you for the suggestion, by the way, Ali, for Libsyn. I've heard that it's pretty good. I will also add that to the list and tell my sister.
Yeah, the list of
we don't forget.
The list of 1,000 platforms that everything will be on.
Exactly. Also, I wanted to offer my condolences to Ms. Happy about their friends dying. Well, not dying. Well, they may as well be dead because they're like on the far right. Yeah, I was gonna say so. They somewhat. I didn't mean to say that they died, but like if in and of a fact, they pretty much did.
They suffered a moral death.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that that's your situation, but we will be your friends.
Yes, we will be your friends, your internet friends.
Yeah, we will be your pals. Instead,
your mates, your posse.
Stop. The word posse just sounds so wrong. It just sounds like posse.
It sounds vaguely like it's talking about something like a woman's,
Oh no! Yeah, it doesn't sound like that at all until you mentioned it.
Well, this is what happens with dirty thoughts. It's never necessarily that you notice them, but when somebody else points it out, you can never unsee it.
That's true. Oh, you've cursed me for life.
I'm sorry,
Um,
but it had to
that's
be
okay.
done. You had to share my burden.
Oh my gosh.
Allie, sounds like you're forming a socialist polycule.
I saw that. Maybe we are. Who knows? But yeah,
it can be done.
I'm glad you feel better, Miss Happy. We will be here for you as virtual pals, gal pals,
squad,
platonic gal pals.
Yes.
I guess I've recently reappropriated the word pals from the straights. I've decided that it is no longer their word to use.
It's ours now. It's our word now.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, actually, speaking of that, there's that one Facebook post that I think about like periodically because it's just so funny. But there was a woman who had given her kidney to her wife, and the top commenter was this like old lady that was like, wow, I wish my friends were close to be like that. And I'm like, it says wife. It literally says wife in the title. I don't know what else to say. I was just like, at that point, I was like,
how, like, we literally spelt it out for you.
Yeah, like it's in the headline, woman gives her wife kidney. I'm actually fucking dying. Anyway, so shout out to that old Karen. Do we have a name for old Karens? Because I feel like Karens are like middle age, and like Tiffany's and Brittany's are like in their like 20s.
Yeah,
30s.
they're like our age.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like
Gertrude.
I feel like Brittany's are our age, but Tiffany's are like 30s, maybe 30s, like late 20s.
And then Karens are like 40s, 60s.
Yes.
The 70s, 80s can be Gertrudes, because that is the ugliest name.
Gertrude, it's true. Gertrude is such a cursed name. Gertrude is such a cursed name. Josiah suggests Vera Flora. Bertha's a good name.
Bertha? Bertha, it literally sounds like that's a name you only give a cow, never a woman.
Oh, shit.
I know. Don't you know, it really summons an image to me of some like really, really fat cow. I can't think of it any other way. I'm sorry. Francine is a cool character on Arthur.
Yeah, Francine was a cool character in Arthur. We won't disrespect Francine like
that. Muffy was so salty at Francine because she thought that Francine was richest. Someone who has a prejudice against rich people.
Wait, what?
Oh, yes. Gertrude Yendel. Yeah. Because she would never tell us our name. I assumed that it was Gertrude because Gertrude was the ugliest name I could think of.
I'm dying. Tammy Lynn. Yeah, Tammy Lynn is like, I don't know. I feel like that's not like an older name. Lucy. No, we have a friend named Lucy. We have a friend named Lucy.
Lucy is beautiful. No, Lucy is light. Lucy is life. We cannot subject her to this.
Becky's like younger too. Becky's and Tiffany's are like our age.
Yeah,
I feel like Becky's and Tiffany's are like Karen's children that she like trains to become Karens.
Karen's in training.
Karen's in training. I'm dying.
Brittany is like, your stereotypical evil white high school student.
Yeah, and Becky is like, I feel like she's like, Karen from the movie Mean Girls. She's like dumb. Like Becky's just dumb. Like she just doesn't know anything.
Yeah, she just kind of has her thoughts inserted into her mind by slightly less stupid Brittany, and then they just move on through life.
Yeah, she's like, she's like the Jon Snow of these. She just knows nothing. She just knows nothing. But yeah, what else? I think maybe she thought we well. But yeah, I don't. Becky. Oh, Becky. I feel like Beyonce really revolutionized the usage of the word Becky after her song. Yes, no, I get it, James. I get it. It's a
Fong
good
is
song.
in the know. She knows the culture.
I don't I don't know anything, but I know that song. How can you not? It's super iconic. And also like I feel like Sir Mix-a-Lot he really did that. You know, he really he really did that for us. We didn't deserve it, but he did.
Do we ever deserve it? No, not really.
This is true. This is true. We never do.
And
But
you're closing in on the 2-hour mark, which is where I usually
we are.
say that.
That's a good way to end it. I also need to.
Links. One
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The story about let's see what. Oh yes, the links again. Sorry, I had a brain meltdown. The first link I will post is how to remove tear gas from your eyes. The second link is how to
right way.
Yeah, disguise your identity online and at protests, and just general safety tips to remember so you don't, get doxxed or thrown in jail while out protesting. I will also link Fwang's Instagram, and I think that
follow me for mostly political posts, but the occasional thirst trap.
Yes, Fwang has so much beautiful content. You will never ever be bored. I will also post her Twitter, although she does not use it as much as I do.
I don't, but I'm still on there, and I've been more active as of late because of the protests. And Twitter has been very useful for circulating information. But I'm mostly on Instagram because that's where people find me, and apparently I can't get likes unless I thirst trap. So
okay,
I'm very proficient in that apparently.
Yes.
So
you have the goods.
Thanks. I just have the angles. That's what the goods are. The goods are angles. I just know how to take pictures of myself. That's really weird.
Angles, that's from. I feel like we need to teach men angles. It's something we do not know.
So true. Every time I go on a man's Instagram, I'm like, there's no way you look like this. There's no way. Like, why?
Why have you done this to yourself?
When they take one of those selfies that's just like this in front of the mirror, like,
no, stop. And
I'm like, what is wrong with you? Could you not at least smile or something?
No, smiles are for women, Fwang. Real men groan and sulk when they take pictures.
Grown men look like they're having the worst time of their life at all hours. Also, thank you, James. It's very kind of you.
James is a connoisseur of good-looking people. He knows his stuff.
Facts. Teach angles, not angle. I like it. That's a good slogan. That's a good slogan.
I love it.
Only grimaces. Yeah, we're calling you out, James. Please fucking smile. Please. Men, I beg of you, smile just once.
Just come on, sweetheart. You know you could look better if you smiled. It's not hard to do.
Maybe that's why men keep asking women to smile, because they don't know how.
Yeah, they want us to teach them.
I, for one, will gladly take one for the team and will teach you how to smile. But yeah. Actually, of the pictures I post on my Instagram, I'm not smiling in that many of them too, actually. Well, now that I think about it.
There are people like you who do not need to smile to look beautiful. And then there are people who do need to smile. So and even if they do, they don't, like me.
No, but I loved your pictures for your birthday. I thought they were amazing.
They're very funny. They
gave me like big witchy queer vibes. I don't know. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, it's what I was going for, so I'm glad it worked. Anyway, before this stream devolves into me rambling about my Twitter photos and selfies any longer,
that's true.
We should call it a night. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Why am I doing this bizarre imitation of sign language? I don't know how to speak sign language. What even is this? This is my theater kid jumping out right now at you into the screen. Anyway, Thanks everyone for coming. Fong, it's been such a pleasure having you as a guest. Like, just like I can't even
Thank
describe
you.
how much of a pleasure it's been. I mean that sincerely. It's just amazing. Just
Aw,
like,
thanks. It's been a lot of fun. This is my first stream, fun fact. So I'm glad that it went well
and it did.
that I said things.
You did speak. This is something that is rarely practiced on first streams.
Wow. Yay.
You accomplished the opening and
Success.
closing of the mouth.
Incredible. Yeah, so thanks everyone. Hope to see you in my followers / DMs. Especially Joe. I will teach you how to smile. Not Josiah. You know how to smile, but I meant Joseph. I'll teach you how to smile. It's okay. We'll get through this trying time together. I will teach you how to
don't cry
smile.
too hard, baby. We are there for
it's
you.
okay. We're here to help you. Gal Pass, yes. So yeah. Goodbye, friends. It was nice having
Adieu.
you.